Welcome to Channel X TV. Delighted to be joined by Fraser, who we spoke to almost about a year ago from MorphCostumes. So, welcome, Fraser. Welcome back. How are you?
I'm very well, thank you, Chris. Thanks for having me.
Now, for those that don't know your business, can you just tell us a little bit about how you got started and then what MorphCostumes are doing today?
So 15 years ago, we had an idea for a side hustle around an all-in-one spandex suit, which we call the Morphsuit. And we took a little bit of our savings and bought 200 units and made a website on an old platform called Volusion, which I don't think is still around, and then did some Facebook advertising and started selling that. And that was very, very successful. And that got us into the costume and fancy dress industry as a whole. And since then, we've rolled out a whole suite of different designs of all different types of costumes, different structures, from inflatables to piggyback costumes to normal generic costumes. We have over 1,200 designs that we sell on our own websites and on Amazon and on other marketplaces in 10 countries around the world directly.
So, this is massive now, then, and huge congratulations. But I know we've just been through your busiest time of the year because I'll be honest and let everyone know I was trying to get hold of you a few weeks ago, back in October, and you're like, no, Chris, not until Halloween's over. So, what's the scale of the business today? You've got 1,200 different types of costume, but how much are you selling at the busiest time of year for you at Halloween?
So the business is highly seasonal around Halloween. We do have an underlying level of sales the rest of the year driven by school curriculums, birthday parties, stag do's,
I'm
hen
guessing Book Day is a good one.
book day. Yeah. And then what we talk about is our season of seasons. So we have Halloween, which is the biggest, and I'll come back and talk about that in a second. Then we go into Christmas. Then we go into European Carnival, where a lot of the European countries celebrate a costume party around Lent, Book Day in the UK, and then Easter. So you have that before you go into the quieter period, before you build back up into Halloween. But Halloween as an occasion is growing and growing in all the countries we operate in around the world. And it really is our peak. We do up to 20% of our revenue in the 2 weeks before Halloween. So it's really intense. You have to have everything ready. That's 20% of our annual revenue. You have to have everything ready ahead of that so that you can cope with that demand. And in our busiest days, we are doing an order every 2 seconds. So it's crazy.
So, an order every 2 seconds. One that the mind boggles on the amount of stock. I'm trying to add up in my head how many sales in a day or a week that is, which is it's not thousands, it's tens of thousands.
Yeah.
How do you, first of all, getting the stock in place, but secondly, how do you fulfill that number of orders?
So a lot of our year is geared to getting that stock in place. So we have to place our orders at the right time because obviously the factories can't all make that at the click of a finger. You have to plan it and then you have to ship it to the right places at the right time to optimize your storage around that. And then fulfillment. So this is where we leverage FBA by Amazon, because the great thing about Amazon is even though those volumes are large, they are nothing compared to what Amazon deals with on any given day, far less one of their peak days. So the fact that we use FBA for a lot of our fulfillment means they can just deal with that without us. If we were trying to do it in our own warehouse or even in a large 3PL, having to hire tens or hundreds of people and stress systems beyond what they're designed to do for such a short period, it wouldn't make economic sense to do that. You'd have to hire all those people, train them, and then let them go again. It wouldn't be good for the people. It wouldn't be good for our business. So it is a really good thing about FBA.
And Amazon must love you because Halloween, everyone else is probably just gearing up for their busiest time in the run up to Black Friday and Christmas. They must love you having you getting your volume out before then.
Yeah,
But
exactly. Go ahead.
I know Amazon has also helped you grow your business enormously. Can you talk to some of the other tools that Amazon have got that have really moved MorphCostumes forward?
Obviously the marketplace itself and the access to all those customers is the first one, but then the advertising within that. And we were privileged that Amazon came to do a set of small videos showing how we've used advertising to help grow our business. And they are just really useful tools to get our products in front of the right people at the right time. And as they give you more and more data through their seller central systems, you can refine that and optimize that and become more effective at it. And getting good at that has been a major part of our success in recent years.
Hmm. And advertising on marketplaces, or we often call it retail media nowadays, we're giving it a fancy name because it's so prolific, has been growing and growing and growing. But I've often heard the complaint on marketplaces that it's almost like an additional fee to sell, that if you don't do advertising, you're not going to get the sales. How do you optimize the advertising, and what tips have you got for other retailers on how to make it a net positive rather than kind of a must have, got to pay for it regardless?
I mean, it's a good point. It is, obviously, and you only have to look at Amazon's results that they gave to Wall Street a few days ago of how much money they are bringing in through advertising, that it is a fee that is levied. So obviously you'd rather you didn't have to pay for it, but in a world where it's always going to exist, you just need to use it to your advantage. You need to use it efficiently and effectively so that you get more market share than you would have got without using it. Because it's just the way of the world. It's like railing against any other fees. You've got to work within the constraints that are there.
So what are your top tips for engaging with advertising? What have you found is a real positive impact from the advertising? And perhaps what have you found that actually you can row back on some advertising at different times or different features because that's not been so effective for yourself?
And the positive is getting a greater share of the digital shelf. So you can use the advertising to make sure you appear in front of more people at the right time. And what I would advise is that you are constrained in what you target. Focus on the most relevant keywords. Yes, and you can get lots of sales by going broad and searching and appearing for lots and lots of terms where your product maybe isn't the most relevant one, but that's going to become very expensive. And the advertising platforms are always happy for you to try that because they're happy to take the extra money. So I would say stay focused, stay relevant, get your product in front of people who are searching for that product, and you will have a much higher conversion rate. You'll be much more effective.
Now, I know you sell on, I think you said about 10 different countries around the world. How important was Amazon advertising to move into new countries and establish yourself there?
It was important, but it's just one part of our playbook. So the good thing about Amazon is when we understand it in one country, the playbook is 90% the same when you go into a different country. You just have the nuances of language and maybe a few different fees, which you have to get your head around in order to be able to do it. So it wasn't any more or any less important than anything else that we do, but it is a very important part of our plan and how we succeed.
And obviously Amazon is massive, and I love the fact that, as you say, on Amazon you can go from one country to another and 90% of it is the same. But which other platforms or marketplaces or channels are you selling on, and which ones are you excited for in the future? And I'm thinking even in the UK, there's so many come along, like the B&Qs, the Debenhams, the Tesco's, and then the likes of TikTok and Temu, which are totally alien to most retailers. What's exciting you both in the UK and abroad, and where do you see the big opportunities for the future?
So at the moment we are on Amazon, which is predominantly, that's our biggest channel. We've got our own website, and then we have eBay. We also tested TikTok Shop. We are very early days, and then we got a few of our products on through Halloween, and we started to experiment with advertising, with affiliates, and how we could work with that. We laugh and say, because we have to test so much through Halloween, that we call it ready, fire, aim. So you just try lots of stuff and see what works, and then you can build on what works and you can discard what doesn't work. So while we were far from scaling TikTok Shop at that point, we did see some green shoots that we think we can build on as we go into our next seasons and into all year round. So we are excited about what we can achieve with that one. The other area that we're excited in is just all the secondary marketplaces, like the ones that you mentioned. You know, obviously B&Q for costumes is never going to rival Amazon in our category. I mean, it might do if you're selling hammers and nails, but not in our category. But that's not to say we can't pick up a few sales there, and we can't pick up a few sales in all the other ones. So we are looking at how we can get our data in the right shape and then use an aggregator in order to make sure that our product appears on all these marketplaces. So there'll be some that are much bigger than B&Q. For example, I believe like Cdiscount in France is roughly similar, maybe a little bit smaller than Amazon in France. So that would be one that we're excited about, that we can potentially add, let's say 50% to our French business on. But if we add up all of those, we hope we can get more value out the assets, and our assets are effectively our products and our product data than we're currently getting. So putting it all together is more the excitement rather than any one individual marketplace.
And talking of the marketplaces is one thing, but which countries excite you at the moment? I mean, we've just had an election, and who knows what tariffs, etc., are going to be going on in the US. Europe, we've had Brexit, we've got proper challenges there. But once you overcome those challenges, is it the familiar markets of US, Europe, Australia, largely English-speaking countries plus our closest neighbours, or are there other territories around the world which are becoming really, really interesting?
I mean, it's a balance of both of those things. That your core key markets, your large, wealthy countries who celebrate a lot of the cultural occasions that have costumes, are going to be remain the big focus. Yes, there is obviously some nervousness around the US while we wait and see what happens around tariffs, and the US is our biggest market. The one consolation for that is that whatever happens will affect everybody, because we all manufacture in the same place. So we'll all have to find the solution. So it'll be about who can turn that challenge into the biggest opportunity of solving that challenge. And it's just one of those things in business. There's always something new popping up that you have to deal with. The one that's maybe a little bit out of the ordinary that is growing fast for us is Mexico. So we can access it through our US business, through the North American Free Trade Agreement, and Amazon's cross-border. And Mexico's economy is booming, partly because of their duty-free entry into the US. So there's been a lot of investment from overseas factories into Mexico. So the Mexican consumer is getting richer quickly and developing quickly and getting into e-commerce quickly. So just by moving our product offering across there, I think we were up 200 or 300% in Mexico. It's still small, but it's growing faster than any other territory.
That's an interesting stat. I wouldn't have, out of all the countries in the world, I wouldn't have picked Mexico as one of the biggest current opportunities.
No, and it's one of those ones that's just organic. We track all our sales in all our countries daily, as all retailers do, and it's just one of those that, you keep looking at it, it's like, that's high, that's still high, that's higher. What's happening here? And then you dig into it a bit more and you try and understand it. And once you're into Mexico, if you actually put inventory, which we haven't done yet, you start to get access, because they have free trade agreements into the rest of Latin America. So you then end up in places like Brazil. We're yet to get there, but Brazil has over 200 million people.
Yeah, I believe they have a little carnival in Rio each year as well.
Exactly, they do. So these are the things. There are all these developing markets that you can lift and drop your strategy and your product data and get, again, more and more money out of the assets that you've taken time to develop.
Mm-hmm. So obviously you're still expanding rapidly, and you're growing. I think a year ago you were selling a product every 3 or 4 seconds, and this year for Halloween it's every 1 or 2 seconds. But what's next for MorphCostumes? Are you likely to expand geographically to grow, or are you looking to develop a larger set of costumes to grow? Where do you see the future in the next few years being for Morph?
We will continue to expand geographically steadily as we see demand. For example, Mexico is a good example. Then we'll invest more in it. We'll make sure the content is better, and we'll follow that. And there are other ones as Amazon expands around Europe. We can deliver there through the European fulfillment network, but we don't necessarily invest in translating it and focusing on it until we see some green shoots. And we have started to see some of that with Sweden seems to be up, where Amazon also doesn't seem to be getting traction in Poland. So potentially then we'll look at that. And that's our model in terms of geographic. But there's unlikely to be huge opportunities that rival the UK or the US in the very short term, because culturally costumes are not as big a part of these countries, and actually just demographically they're not as big countries. So you have 350 Americans, you've got 8 million Swedes. It's never going to be the same. So we'll get a bit of geographic expansion, but the other things that we're interested in is just continuing to expand our range. The great thing about costumes is it is a very wide it's a very wide category. There are lots of different verticals within that, hundreds and hundreds of different verticals and themes that you can do. And then within each vertical, if you think of witch costumes, there's many different ways you can execute a witch. So we will go wider and deeper across all of that, and we'll do that quickly. And we've got a good process for developing MPD at scale, and we've invested in the teams to do that. And then secondly, it's about adding the accessories as well, and then making sure that we have the strategies for cross-selling, so that we can drive our average order spend and drive our basket spend up and increase our profitability that way. So if you're buying a witch, can we sell you a broom? Can we sell you the face paint? Can we add to each of those orders? So that's where we'll get the majority of our growth going forward.
Yeah, and that's actually really clever and really interesting, because if you're buying a costume, like you say, for a witch, how can you be a witch without a broom? And the face paint is almost like, why hadn't I thought of that before?
Yeah, exactly. And if you can solve the logistics of it, then, and the costs around the logistics, then that's how you can really you can add it, because the face paints won't cost you very much, and but you don't want to be sending it from 2 places and paying two delivery charges. Otherwise, your face paints get very expensive if you're having to ship them across America for just 3 face paint crayons. So it's all the back end stuff that will drive the success or failure of that. But the good thing is, it's such a big category with such demand growing around the world that there is always plenty to be working on. So yeah, we've got a lot to do, even though Halloween only was a week ago. We're already straight back into planning 2020.
Yeah, but Christmas is like less than that's frightening. It is less than 2 months away. It's about a month and a half away. So it'll be time for the Christmas elves and the Santa costumes now. I guess.
I mean, they're already out. We say, America particularly, we sell a phenomenal number, a surprising number of Santas for Halloween. I think people just have when they've got their costume hat on, they're literally they are going to buy their Halloween costumes and their Christmas costumes at one time. So you do roll very quickly into that season. So yeah, there's never any rest. You got to do your planning at the same time as you're selling. But I think a lot of retailers know that, and I'm sure it's the same in other categories.
Oh, Fraser, so good to speak to you again. And if you're up for it, I would love to come back next year and see how Halloween 2025 has been.
Definitely. It's been great speaking to you, and I'd love to do it again in a year's time.
Excellent. Thank you, Fraser.
Thanks a lot, Chris.